Hey everyone, it's Chris here in the studio for our live. Thanks very much for joining us. This is a pretty special live for us. This one is linking towards our 25-year anniversary for Part Select. So that's a very big special thing for us. That's 25 years where we've been helping customers fix their own appliances, and we've done a terrific job and we're striving to do even more. So another thing that makes tonight pretty special is it's not just myself here with the live. For those of you who have been with us for a long time, you will know Steve Ash. So Stephen, you're here with us tonight.
Welcome. It's nice to see you again, Chris. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, good to be with you. As well tonight, we, in partnership with Breville, have a Breville Express that we're going to be giving away at the end of this live. So anybody that sends in a comment or a question, we're going to be adding your name to the list, and we're going to be doing a draw at the end, throwing a bunch of balls with the proper numbers on them from your inputs, and we're going to do a draw, and whoever we pull out is going to win that Breville.
We're all looking forward to that. So send us your questions.
Yeah, so in this live, what we want to do is Steve and I are going to kind of be talking about the differences between the old style appliances and the new style, and the pros and cons, and which one each of us likes better compared to the other. And as well, we're here to answer any of your appliance questions. So please feel free to message in and we'll try and get to you and get all your questions answered for you. So Steve, if you had to pick a machine, this being the newer style front load technology, and you've got your hand there in the old style.
Well, given that I've been in that business for a long time and I'm very familiar with the older product, I tend to gravitate to that. However, I also have to look at what the differences in newer appliances have brought for the average consumers, the economy of operating that type of a newer type washer, for instance, that's much more ecologically friendly, uses less water, uses less detergent, easier on clothes. Does it last as well as an older unit? That's up for debate, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, you know, that's fair. Like you, I kind of cut my teeth on those top load machines, and those things are bulletproof, and the nice thing is they're easy to work on. You can still get parts for them. You know, they had good washability. They were maybe a little harder on clothes than some of the old machines that Steve and I grew up on. But then you compare to the newer stuff, and to Steve's point, you know, we're talking low power consumption, low water usage, gentle on clothes, good washability. So it's kind of a trade-off compared to the older one that's going to work a little bit different, cost you a little bit more, but they last. So it's one of the challenges today is trying to decide which way to go.
I would agree with you on that, Chris. Another thing with the newer product, the advent of a lot more electronics in the newer appliances, it does tend to be a little more challenging to troubleshoot problems. What we're used to, old mechanical timers and direct drive motors, and you know, even the belt-driven machines. Mm-hmm. Like I say, we cut our teeth on those, and they're pretty straightforward. Yeah. It gets to be a little bit more of a challenge working on some of that newer stuff.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, when you look at, you know, that washer there that uses a mechanical timer, they're pretty trouble-free. And then we've got something like this that's bells and whistles and all electronic, which is really cool. But that's kind of why Steve and I have enjoyed doing what we do so much, is because what we do, not just sell parts, but we try to help people figure out which part they need and how to put it in. So it's a lot of fun for us to try and help you, you know, salvage repairing that older appliance instead of having to go out and reinvest in new.
We've got a first question coming in.
Oh, good.
On YouTube, Biohazard ZZ asks, what machine brand would you suggest? Because my Maytag original of 40 plus years has just died.
Okay, so we have a question regarding which would you look at now to replace a very old Maytag washer. And Steve, you're very familiar with those machines.
I've been familiar with that Maytag washer for more than 45 years, so yes. And albeit they're a very good machine, one of the issues now is, are all of those parts still available? And what parts are available, are they still affordable? So to answer your question on what's a good brand, I guess there's a few things to look at. If you have a local retailer in your area that services their appliances, that's definitely one thing that you want to keep in mind. Chris?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And as far as the new stuff that's out there and which is one that's better than another, it kind of depends on a few things. One is your price point, what machine best fits your pocketbook, as well as what features do you want. Because you can go from a basic machine up to something like this that's got, steam wash and multiple cycles that some you may use, some you may not. And what are your needs? Are you looking for something with a large tub, large capacity, or are you looking for something that's, a smaller tub? But as far as what's out there today, a lot of the manufacturers, things are starting made, built, and how they operate. Some have more features than others. Some, do things that other ones don't. But the basic concept of doing laundry is the same pretty well across every manufacturer. As far as reliability, anything that man builds is subject to failure. So just like your car that's out in your yard, there's good ones and there's bad ones. So hopefully whichever one you pick, you'll be able to have a machine that's going to last you a long time. And if not, if you do have troubles, you want to be sure, to Steve's point, you can get service and you can get parts.
I would definitely concur with you on that, Chris. That's a good way to put it. Look at your budget, look at what your needs are, what features work for you, and if at all possible, if you've got a local dealer that you can purchase from, then you've got some backup service. And good luck with the draw on the Breville.
We have another question that came in through YouTube, and it's asking about the newer machines. If they use less water, is the clean quality worse?
Oh, great question. So we're being asked about the newer machines where they use less water. Because they do that, is it impacting the washability? So from my perspective, when manufacturers started having to go to less water, less power, and they were mandated to do that, that's not just something they decide to do on their own. There was at first a decrease in washability. There were some issues that came up over poor washability and actually creating some linting on clothes. That was a big piece for a while. But most of those issues are pretty well solved now. So now you're seeing front load technology, which is gentle on the clothes and gives good washability. So again, low water consumption, low power consumption. But the neat thing is the washer had a comment of his own on it. But the neat thing that you're starting to see is even with top load, the difference, a lot of people prefer top load over the whole front load just for ease of loading and a whole bunch of reasons. But you're seeing manufacturers now take front load technology and put it into top load design. So they're basically taking this style of tub and drive system and moving it up into from a horizontal version into a vertical version. So it looks just like your top load, but the technology is the same as this. So you're, again, low power consumption, low water usage, high spin speeds, and gentle on clothes. So in today's world, the machines you're buying today, you can have those benefits of saving on water and power and getting good washability.
I would have to agree with Chris on that. One of the major concerns with a lot of consumers is how easy it is to load and unload your washer. And those that have been used to a top load washer are leaning towards, or perhaps are leaning towards the front load and wondering, it's like, that's a little harder to get in and out of, but it does have that feature of low water usage, low power usage. And again, as Chris mentioned, most of that technology has now been transferred into top load washers, so they do use much less water. They are a lot gentler on their wash action. However, they do obtain the equivalent results as a current front load.
One of the things I tend to like about front load machines, and they're the most popular right now, is they do give you more flexibility as to what you want to put in your home, because you can have them side by side with your dryer, or you can stack your dryer up on top of your washer. So, it's a lot more for fitting into your home space. And now in today's world where houses are getting smaller, space is very important. So some of the advantages of the front load technology kind of suit the modern day world.
We have another question in. Are there dealers of Speed Queen in Canada?
Okay, so the question is, are there Speed Queen dealers in Canada? And yes, they are. Um, they're not, you don't find the Speed Queen in some of the big box stores. They're more independent dealers that have them, but they're a very strong brand and a very strong machine.
And I would agree with Chris on that. I do know a Speed Queen dealer that's local and is, again, a small mom and pop operation, offer a good machine at a very comparable price.
And related to the Speed Queen topic, Brandon King on YouTube says, just got a Speed Queen for my parents and they love it. How do you all like the brand? So maybe tell us a little bit more about Speed Queen as a brand.
So that's interesting. Speed Queen is a brand that was very strong in the commercial side, in your laundromats, etc. And it still is. But they've moved a lot of that same technology now into their residential brand. So they've kind of stemmed away from some of this new gadgety and, front load. They still pretty well offer top load, but it's a very strong machine. It's almost to the point of being commercial duty. Now you do pay extra for that kind of manufacturing and reliability, but there's a lot of positive comments coming out about the Speed, about the Speed Queen machines.
Again, I would agree with Chris on that. I have had the opportunity to work on some of the commercial Speed Queen units that have been purchased or produced in the last 5 years, and very happy with their performance and their reliability.
We have a lot of questions coming in actually. This one's actually a comment, so we don't necessarily you don't have to necessarily speak to it, but Blitz KC says, rebuild that Maytag I did with the help of Part Select.
There you
Which
go.
we didn't pay them to say.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's no question. When you're talking about the older Maytag, which Steve is extremely familiar with, I dealt with a lot of the old English-built washers that were around that same time as those original Maytags. Belt-driven, all kinds of good things to say about them for sure. So in my mind, if you can get the parts and you find our videos helpful, by all means do the rebuild. I still prefer the old over the new.
All right, another question in from YouTube. This one is, my Gen Air refrigerator does not defrost. I need a new board, but I hesitate to make the purchase since the voltage burns the board out. Is there a board available that low, high voltage would not burn out?
Well, that is a very good question. Typically, if a board has failed due to a fluctuation in incoming voltage to the home, either a spike or anything to that nature, that is probably not related to the appliance itself. As far as the reliability of the replacement board, if your board is clean, you shouldn't have any issue with replacing that.
Yeah, a lot of the newer appliances come out now have surge protection built into them, so it should help, alleviate a lot of the issues you're going to have with circuit boards burning out. Now, that's not to say you're not going to wind up a problem with an electronic circuit board having a bad solder joint, and you'll see that tends to arc the board and burn the board out. That can happen with any make, any brand, any board. It just is a manufacturing thing. But, if you're regularly having trouble with some of the circuitry in your appliances being bothered, you need maybe a look at that power supply. Maybe you're getting surges, or maybe it's going the other way. Instead of a surge, you may be getting low voltage. And that's almost as detrimental to a circuit board as high voltage.
Great. Another question from Blitz KC on YouTube who asks, any chance of finding a universal refrigerator gasket for old refrigerators?
Well, that is a very good question.
It is. There used to be, depending on how old, like old, when you're starting to talk about like rounded doors on the refrigerator, there used to be, and I haven't looked at it for quite a while, but you used to be able to buy that in length. And so you would buy it length, you'd measure your door frame around to see how long the gasket would be, and you would order it by length, and it would be a replacement that you could put in. Now, if your fridge is a little bit more newer than that, and basically the gasket is one that's mounted to the door and the liner with a whole bunch of screws all the way around it, that's a little trickier. Those are molded, and you pretty well have to get the exact right part number for it so that it fits well and it seals well.
Agreed. There's a lot of variety in the type of door gaskets that we see on refrigerators, particularly built in the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
Different methods of how they're attached, either with screws, maybe with metal retaining brackets, and some of them are actually put right into the foam before it cures in the door itself. So those, you're not likely going to find a universal gasket that will work on all refrigerators.
Yeah, it's true. The gasket design has changed a lot over the years. You're starting to see now almost all the manufacturers that are building refrigerators today are using a push-in style gasket, which for the servicer, it's awesome. They just pull out and they just push back into the liner. Very easy for a tech to change, but it's just as easy for the homeowner to change. Compared to the ones Steve was mentioning where they actually build the door by foaming the gasket into place. You can still get the gasket, you can still change them, they're just a lot more difficult. And I think somewhere within our site you'll find a video on how to change door gaskets on your refrigerator, and we show a bunch of different types. So hopefully that's of some help to you. So in looking at, we're talking like the washers here between new and old, but a lot of the same stuff applies to dishwasher, new and old. Older dishwashers had fantastic washability. They had big, powerful motors in them, macerator blades that chopped things up. So, there wasn't so much the screens you had to clean because it just chopped everything up like a food waste disposer and pushed it out the drain. But they fell under the same issue that any of the appliances have, that there was mandated to the manufacturers to use less water, use less power, and as well, the product when they went to the landfills had to break down within a certain period of time. So that changed an awful lot as far as designing goes. So dishwashers are very much like wash machines did. They have to use less water, less power, and they struggled for a while with washability, but I think the machines you buy today, you'll find that the dishwasher's washability is just as good as the old ones were.
Yes, and one of the biggest issues I recall having with older style dishwashers is they were noisy. And they did use a huge amount of water. Washability, as Chris mentioned, they had a big powerful motor pump in them, so washability was never a real problem at all. And today's dishwashers, as Chris mentioned, their focus tends to be on features as well as the quiet level. I think of those early dishwashers, they were really noisy, so you did not run them at night while you were trying to sleep because they made too much noise. Or if you had company coming and want to sit around the dinner table, you certainly weren't going to start your dishwasher. Nowadays, you can barely hear most of those new dishwashers, and they do a great job.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's funny, the new dishwashers, one of the things that's really nice about, so any of the water, so anything that's coming off your dishes, that's insult to the heat, or it just keeps that off over when you look at the new ones today, and they're super quiet. Some of these brands that are out there, and the higher end brands, you can hardly hear them running. They're amazing. But what I don't like about them is if you do need to do service on them, you have to pull them out of the cupboard. You don't have a choice in order to service them. So the old ones were great. You could pretty well do anything while they were still in the cabinet, but the new ones today, they have to be pulled out. And there's even some parts you change. You literally have to turn the dishwasher upside down on its roof or ceiling or whatever you want to call it. So it's just a different way of doing service and different way of manufacturing. But it's just the trade-offs you get in order to get the features and get the benefits and get the quietness. So,
agreed. And if you check out some of our videos on dishwasher repair, you'll know what Chris says about basically you have to pull that dishwasher completely out of the cabinets, lay it on its back, lay it on its side, sometimes upside down to facilitate repair.
We've got another question. This is more of a symptomizing one. So we have a Maytag washer A8600. It agitates, but it can't spin unless it's manually started, and then it finishes on its own. There's a burning smell and loud squealing noise when it first tries to spin. Any ideas?
I'll throw that to Steve because
I've never heard of that problem at all. That sounds very much like a tub bearing issue with that washer. That old Maytag washer basically used a reversing motor. One direction it would turn the agitator, or the gears in the transmission, which would turn the agitator. In the other direction, when you go to spin, it turns the whole inner basket, which rotates in a bearing. And as that bearing dries out after 30 or 40 years, it probably will need to be repaired. And we certainly have videos here that will show you how to do that repair. With that increased friction with a bad bearing, it tends to cause the belt to get pretty hot, and that's probably what you're finding with the smell. It doesn't want to slip easily on the pulley, so it grabs hold of it and starts to burn it up. So a fairly easy repair.
So if the parts are still available, you'd say fix it.
If the outer tub on that washer was still intact, yes, I would go ahead and repair that.
Yeah. So that's a neat point to talk about as far as new and old. Old style washers, and we're talking the age of that Maytag you were just talking about, their outer tubs that held the water were a metal with a porcelain coating on them. And those tubs were amazing. They lasted a long time, and the biggest nightmare with them was over time, you know, if a nail or something came out of, left in a pair of jeans or whatever, got in through the washer, it would scratch that coating on the inside, and eventually that tub would rust out. Now, to one of the positive parts of new style is pretty well everything is a plastic tub, inner and outer. So you're starting to find that you don't have the issues with tub rusting like you did in the old ones. So why the old ones were quiet and did great washing and everything, that was their only downside, was those tubs rusting out, where in the modern ones they don't.
So it's definitely something that you want to look at before you would attempt a repair anywhere inside of that machine, and make sure that that outer tub shows signs of lasting for a lot longer.
Another question from YouTube, has any vendor solved the front load seals issues, mold?
A lot of work's been done on that, because you're right, the original front loads had a lot of issue with the door boot, door gasket, door seal. This little guy with, well, even you can see on this one, you can see a little bit of mold, and when you really open it up and look down in there, you can see a bit more. So manufacturers got some solutions to it. They've done a lot of changes in which they start now when the machine's working and filling with water, and even while it's washing, they're circulating water down and over that door and into that door boot, door gasket assembly. There's actually drain holes in the bottom there that the water drains back into the tub. Original ones didn't have that, so water laid in there, and that's where the mold would start to form. But still, every manufacturer will recommend that after you're finished doing your load, to leave the door open so that air can get in and dry that out. And even with doing that, you still, as part of your regular maintenance, really should take the time to, just with some vinegar and water or even a commercial cleaner, wipe out around that door gasket, around the front and down inside this area here. Just wipe that out, because there will be stuff in there, and you'll even get some lint and stuff that may clog those holes and stop the water from being able to drain through. So yeah, it does. There is a thing that goes with front load, and that's a little bit extra maintenance that you didn't have to do with your top load.
Well, I've been a front load washer user for the last 20 years. As a matter of fact, I'm still using that same Maytag front load washer. And one of the things that I learned right off was, if we didn't dry out that door seal or door boot seal, you ran the risk of getting some mold and mildew in that area. So keeping it clean was paramount. The other thing was making sure that I left the door open. Whenever I was done with a cycle, I left the door ajar. That allowed air to circulate through there. As well as, when Chris mentioned, doing a thorough cleaning, either with just vinegar and water, and they have some commercial products out there available for washing front load washers. Yeah. And some of the newer door seals, I've noticed they've got a material added to that rubber to make it less susceptible to mold and mildew, with some method or measure of improvement on that. But again, the key thing is, as Chris says, keep that door open when you're done. Keep it dry. If there's lint and stuff that's built up in those drain holes, make sure that's cleared out so that it allows it to dry properly.
Yeah, and you'll notice on a lot of the newer front loads, they actually have a clean cycle built into them, be one of your many options. and they recommend by your owner's manual how often you should do that. But basically, the machine is going to go through a cycle of numerous fills. It rinses and spins and rinses and spins, and it's designed to help clean out any of that mold that may be, or even old dried soap, cleaning out the tub itself from inside, as well as cleaning out that door boot. But there's still a regular maintenance required by the homeowner to wipe that out every now and then.
Hey guys, the viewers want to see what our prize is.
Oh, good stuff. So that's the Breville Express. For those of you who enjoy making your own coffee to the same, instead of going to your favorite barista to create it, you can do it yourself at home. And I'm no expert in it because I'm a drive-through guy for my coffee, but Breville is one of the top names in home brewing, so I don't think you'd be disappointed if you were able to win this little guy tonight.
Perfect. And on Facebook, Megan Jones says, you guys helped me just fix my Whirlpool heating element tonight on my own. I'm so thankful for you guys. I feel so much accomplishment because of you guys.
Well, there, and that's our goal,
Yeah.
is to not to put appliance techs out of business, but there's an awful lot of repairs that a homeowner, a do-it-yourselfer can easily do. It just takes some time and some patience and some guidance, and that's what we're here for, and that's what our
Yeah.
website does.
That's both what Chris and I have both been doing for the last number of years here. Is that gives us great satisfaction when we hear a comment like that from a customer that has fixed their own appliance. Good for you.
Well done.
Yeah, we have a similar comment on YouTube. Again, someone saying, I love these parts company videos. We had to make 2 different repairs to a new used fridge and one to my LG washer that we never would have been able to do without your guys' help. So.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yes, that, as I say, that makes it worth all our hard work here.
Yeah.
We were happy to hear that kind of a comment from you.
Yeah. And we're still doing more and more videos as the technology is changing and the newer appliances are coming out. We're doing more and more videos to try and help you through that. In fact, I still talk to a lot of technicians that are out there, and quite honestly, they're making use of our videos as well. And we do have an advantage where we have more time than the average technician to take things apart and learn them and understand them and be able to show you how to do it. And we've got a great video team that works with us, and they do their best to make sure they capture every single step that we need to do in order to change the part. So it just makes it easy for you.
On Facebook, Carafly Guadamgiano, I didn't do a good job saying that. She says, happy 25th anniversary.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're very happy to put 25 years behind us.
5 years. It's funny now that I look at it. 25 years goes by fairly quickly, but I think as a technician, each year we would probably complete 1,000 different repairs. So it would be in 1,000 different homes each year fixing appliances. And to think over that 25 years, how many people have saved their money by not having to have a technician come in, that have done it themselves. So yeah, it's great to hear that people are having success on doing their own repairs. That's really cool.
Well, having been in that business for probably 40 years and seeing how things have changed, where trade schools were not putting out programs anymore for appliance technicians. So that age of the average technician was starting to creep up there quite a bit, and no new guys coming in. So it was really good for everybody that we started doing these videos to help the consumers do their own repairs. And it's worked out quite well for us.
Yeah, it's very good. And it's interesting because, to your point, there's a lot of newer technicians coming into the trade, and it's not an easy thing to be able to know everything about every appliance. So one of the things I notice as a technician is going to people's homes now, they're far more educated on their appliances, how they're supposed to work, and what things can go wrong. And our videos help with that. It gives you a chance that if you do feel you need to call somebody in, if you take some time and go through some of our information, you'll be able to know for sure that the technician that's coming to see you is going down the right track and doing the repair.
Another question in from our email lists. Someone emailed in asking, how do I clean my LG Stackable washer and dryer? Any tips?
Well, with the stackable washer, it's obviously going to be a front load washer, And as Chris elaborated on earlier, they're keeping that door boot area clean and dry is paramount. The other thing with a lot of those newer machines may have that wash cycle built right into it so that it will clean the machine itself, gets rid of all that excess soap. I find that with the advent of front load washers, when people have switched from top loads that used a lot of water and therefore a lot of detergent, they tended not to change the amount of detergent they used in a front load washer. So in most cases, they put more detergent in than they need it to be, which tends to build up in areas in the washer that you don't see. The inner basket is nice, shiny stainless steel. You don't see a soap buildup in there. Outside of that, in that plastic outer tub, there tends to be a buildup of that soap crud. Putting it through that wash cycle tends to loosen that up, remove it, keeps the odors down. For the dryer, I'll let Chris take that one.
Yeah, so on the LG, the stacked one, whether it's the independent front load with the full-size dryer on top of it, or their new all one piece, the maintenance is still the same, and you treat them as two independent units. So the maintenance you do on your front load washer is sort of what we've talked about previously, in which running the clean cycles, monthly wiping out that front door gasket with some vinegar and water, running some either a commercial product or some vinegar and water through your machine to clean it out. Your dryer, same maintenance you would do on a regular dryer, you would want to do on your stacked version. And it's a little bit trickier because, the machine's up there a little ways. So the biggest thing you can do to look after that machine is clean your lint filter after every load. It makes a world of difference because drying clothes is all about moving air. And if that filter's plugged up or it's got a lint coating on it, it's going to slow the air down. It's going to cost you more to run that dryer to do a load of clothes. Any dryer, you want to make sure that filter's clean. You want to take a look down into where that filter goes into to see that there's no lint that's gotten past it and gotten caught up. And as well, you'll want to make sure you check your dryer vent. Have a good vent, and ideally the metal pipe, the solid metal pipe going from your dryer into your home. And as well, you want to make sure every now and then you go outside your home and look at where that dryer vents outside. There'll be some sort of a flap or screen there to keep birds and the wind from getting into your dryer vent. But check that to make sure it's clear because they'll clog up there. And the more the dryer is restricted, the more it costs you to run it, but it also allows heat to back up into the machine, and that'll affect thermostats and all kinds of stuff. And with any dryer, once you start to hear weird noises like squeaks, groans, rattles, scraping, you're going to want to take it apart and have a look and see what's causing that. And the sooner you resolve the issue, the less it's going to cost you, because the longer you wait, more parts start to wear out than that initial one that started the noise.
Another question off of YouTube. How hard is it to replace the heater coils in an LG dryer?
Well, with most dryers, particularly if it's either a stack unit or a matching front load washer dryer pair, typically the front panel doesn't expose any screws that hold that in place. So you may want to look at either a video where we've done a repair on that model of dryer or a similar model. Essentially what you need to do is to pull the door front panel assembly off of there to gain access to that heater coil. In most cases, it's in a metal can that sits on either side of the drum close to the base, and then air will be drawn through that element, forced through or drawn through the drum and exit out through the exhaust fan. Chris?
Yeah, you're right, Steve. They're pretty easy to service. To Steve's point, you need to be able to get that front off the dryer. Well, similar to what this one is. So in order to get this whole front section off, because to replace almost anything on these dryers, it's all done from the front, which is nice. You don't really have to pull them out away other than to power them down maybe. So you need to, top comes off, some screws or clips come off to release the console, and then you'll see some screws so you can get this whole front panel off, and then you have access to it. So depending on the age of your LG dryer, how soon you're having to replace that element, if it's not that old, take the time after you do your repair to check your vent, because if you wind up with any kind of a blockage and you get heat buildup, it'll impact the life expectancy of that dryer element. So if you're investing the time and the money, do that extra little bit of checking your vent to make sure it's clear.
Yeah. After having spent many years in a university environment of looking after laundry equipment, hundreds of dryers in each location. To Chris's point, venting is the key thing to making a dryer work efficiently. And the more it's restricted, the more heat builds up in there. That starts to dry out bearings, belts start to dry out. That's when you start having problems with parts. So number one, make sure you got a good working vent.
Not to mention that you're also preventing any chance of potential fire from lint buildup. So it's about efficiency and saving money in drying your clothes, but as well, it's a safety thing.
They asked quickly, would I have to remove the drum?
Yes.
Yes, typically you're going to have to remove that drum to get good access to it. If you can fight your way through it without removing the drum, save yourself the trouble. Pull the belt off the motor and idler pulleys, lift the drum out, and you have easy access.
Yeah. And another thing, if you're doing those sort of repairs, those of us who've done it a lot kind of know where to put our hands and things like that. But of course, you need to have the power turned off. You never want to open up any appliance without turning your power off. But you'll find on today's modern day appliances, most of the pieces of metal in there are what they call stamped out. So the edges are very sharp. So you may want to make sure you've got some sort of safety glove on. And I know it's hard to work with gloves on. I don't enjoy it either, but just keep in mind that a lot of the metal edges in there are sharp. So just as a safety thing, just keep that in mind when you go to take them apart. But yep, it's not a big deal. Once you get the front off, you can pop that belt off, as Steve said, and the drum lifts right out.
Another question on YouTube from David Steckler. He asks, and this touches on what we talked about earlier, best way to clean a rubber gasket on front-loading washer. It gets pretty funky with black mold.
Well, I don't know if there's anything else that we could add to that. Like I say, keeping it dry helps to prevent it. If you've already got mold on there, you can try the bleach treatment, but in honesty, you're not going to get rid of all of the mold on there. You are still going to have a stain there. Does it cause a problem? Typically not. It does. If it's that hard to scrub it off there, it's probably not going to end up on your clothes anyways. The real key is to keep it dry to prevent it from getting any worse. And if need be, you can replace those door boot seals. We've done several videos on how to put those on. It's really not that difficult a job.
Yeah, even looking at this one, and this design's fairly similar, whether it's Samsung, LG, Whirlpool, they all basically do the same thing. The gasket itself is secured to the tub. It just pushes around a lip, and there's a wire that goes around it to hold it in place. And then this piece will pop through the opening of the door assembly, and again, it sets into this edge of the seal sets into a lip on the front panel, and then it again has a wire that goes around it and secures it into place. So if yours has gone to the point where you don't think you can get all the mold cleaned off, or you're just, concerned it's going to keep coming back and coming back, then it's certainly not a big deal to replace. And they're not that terribly expensive like they used to be when they first came out. So it's a very common repair. Most technicians are probably doing 2 or 3 of them, a week. So make it a Sunday afternoon project.
Another question on YouTube. Are there any parts you would recommend buying spares of? I ran into an issue where a vendor replaced the part with a new one, then stopped manufacturing it. Perhaps a video.
Oh,
That's a tough one.
yeah, that is. Yeah, I understand what you're thinking. You don't want to be caught like that, having to buy a new appliance because a part has failed, or you can't get it anymore. Most major manufacturers are required to have parts available for up to 10 years. Now, you are starting to see some things go in LA sooner than that, but a lot of times that's a discussion you may want to have with manufacturer after that time span. Common wearing parts on a dryer are typically the drum rollers, the belt, and the idler. So, if it's a dryer you're concerned about, those are worthwhile having on hand. You're going to have to replace them. They're normal wearing items, so you won't be wasting your money by having those on hand. Washers are a little trickier. New style washers like these ones are direct drive motors, so there's really nothing you can do there or have on hand. Yeah, the only thing I commonly have to go replace on front loads or strike on them on the dryer. It's there's a strike here and there's a catch. You know, front loads from opening, closing, and slamming the doors, the plastic ones will break. You know, that's something I might have on hand. But otherwise, you're pretty well having to look at waiting until it fails, because you could stockpile a lot of parts and still
Yeah,
not get it right.
I would agree with Chris on that. With a washer, there's just so many variables there. You could do some research, some research on the model that you have, and let's say you found one that was a common problem with a drain pump. You know, and if it was a really common issue, maybe you might want to keep one of those on hand. But for the most part, the parts are typically unique. They're not wear parts. You know, they work or they fail. Today's appliances, now I don't see those trends of, you know, one part being consistently at fault. But you can do some research on that and it might help you out.
Just to kind of add to that, one of the challenges as a service technician, whose whole goal really is to arrive at your home when you need them and fix it the same day. And in my time, we used to carry probably about $10,000 worth of inventory in the service truck in order to try and do just that. In today's world, there's so many different models that do part changes and design the very next year or within the year. So it's impossible to be able to carry the exact part for your product every time. So most truck stocks in service vehicles today is much, much smaller because you just can't stock the same part. And, you know, so the tech's going to arrive, he's going to assess it, he's going to have to order the part, and then you're waiting. And that's, unfortunately, it's not great service, but it's the world today.
We have a comment from one of our email newsletter subscribers. I just ordered new hoses for my washer, a 30-year-old Kenmore. I'm wondering if I need to do that silicone tape on the threads before screwing them in. Is that common practice to always do that or not?
Well, I guess that's open to discussion. The hoses and the valve that those hoses are attached to, they're designed to not need that Teflon tape. Certainly not to seal it from leaking. What they could do is help facilitate removing that hose if you have to replace it. When you get a metal hose in onto a metal hose bib or faucet on your wall, there is that chance that corrosion will cause those to stick together and be really, I've had cases where I just could not get that hose off of the faucet, where having Teflon tape on it might solve that problem. As far as keeping it from leaking, that's not going to be an issue. So if you look at the back of any of these water valves, you'll note that the valve housing is typically just plastic. The hose is going to have a metal end on it. You should not ever need to use Teflon tape on that. If the threads are damaged on that valve, you need to change the valve.
And that brings up another good point in which we look at replacement parts today. Now, everything we sell as a company is what they call OEM, or it's the same part that the manufacturer uses. It's up to the same quality and standards. So if, to Steve's point, if these threads are worn a bit, or you're finding, you know, that you've had to change them, you're wondering of putting that sealant tape on it, to Steve's point, you shouldn't have to. But if you're looking at aftermarket parts, you'll see, and I've run into this a lot, where the quality of these threads is not the same. The plastic is softer, and if you start to put your new hose on that valve, and you don't get it on exactly right with the aftermarket stuff, it's going to strip it. And it's going to strip the first couple of threads, and you're not either going to be able to get the hose on, or you'll get it on, but it's going to leak. And that's why you're starting to see more people saying, oh, you need to use that Teflon tape in order to prevent that. If you've got an OEM part and a new hose, you shouldn't need that Teflon tape at all.
No, the rubber gasket on the end of the hose is what's going to create the watertight seal, not the thread to thread.
Great. Another question off of YouTube from Joshua Spencer. He asks, how often do you need to replace the damper on the washer drum? I think mine needs new ones.
Damper on a washer drum. I'm not really familiar with what he's referring to. When I think of damper with a washer, I think of a top-load Maytag washer that had dampers on the base.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if possibly, and we could be on the wrong track altogether, but if you're talking about the fin that's inside the drum, if it's a front load, those typically, you can replace them. You typically don't have to unless something's broke. If something's gotten wedged in, sometimes you'll get coins and stuff that get inside them and they'll crack and split, and you may have to change them. Depending on the make, some are quite easy to change. Other ones, they're a little bit more involved, but it can be done. So depending on your machine, check our site, look to see if we've got a video and can help you through that. If we're on the right track. If we're not, comment back into us and get us straightened out, and we'll see if we can answer it better for you.
Yeah. Our apologies on that, Josh. We're not really sure exactly what it is you're asking.
Perfect. A comment came in, another one from our email subscriber list. My daughter-in-law has a Whirlpool electric range that burned out one of the heating elements. I can't seem to find the model number or the information plate. Where should I look?
Fair question. Model and serial plates, manufacturers like to move around, and I don't know why, but they do. And in the olden days, listen to me, Steve.
In our days.
Yeah, in our days, the model plate was nice and big with lots of letters. You couldn't miss them.
Yeah.
The ones you see today look like all the other tags that are on them, you know, safety warnings and all that, and they've got little tiny typing, and they're a little harder to find. But most often, you're going to find that by, if yours has a drawer, like either a warming drawer or a storage drawer, pull that out and look down on the frame on either side of the leg. There should be a silver tag there. If not, just under, again in that same area, but just underneath the door, you may find that tag that's there with the model and serial number on it. Actually, Steve's got an example right there on this particular one.
Right in this area, typically you will find the model number. If it's a freestanding range, it does have a drawer. We've also found them on the back of the console,
Yeah.
which would mean having to pull that range forward enough or put a little mirror in behind it and see if you can find a model number there. And they're typically, in most cases, around about a 10-character digit model number for most products now.
Yeah.
But it's imperative to get the proper model number to get the proper part.
Yeah, for sure. There's even a couple manufacturers that do weird things, like when you open the door, you'd almost have to look up underneath that lip where the cooktop goes on. I don't know why they do that. It's the most annoying thing in the world. And the writing's so small on them now, if I'm doing service calls, I usually have to get a young person in the home to come and read it off to me because they're getting that small. But that's where it'll look, especially on the Whirlpool. Look down on either side of the legs on where the drawer is at the bottom, and it should help you find it. And I believe on our site we actually have a place where you can go to that'll help you find your model number.
Another email subscriber asks, how technical is it to change out a through-the-door ice dispenser? The water works fine. Is it mechanical or electrical or both fix?
Yeah.
Yes. So, that is a good question, and there's a little bit of both with most ice and water dispensers, and it sounds like the problem is with the ice dispensing is what I'm gathering here. And changing the whole assembly is not easy in most cases. Depending on the model, some of those dispensers are foamed into the door. They don't come out. Most of them will have individual parts available. So there may be a solenoid that operates the door. If it's just a case of it not being able to drop the ice cubes out, first of all, you would want to determine, is it a problem with the unit producing ice or dispensing the ice? If it doesn't dispense it, we need two things to happen. There has to be an auger motor that turns the auger in the ice bin to force that ice cube or crushed ice, whichever you choose, into a chute. And then something has to operate that chute to allow the ice to drop down. So Chris is going to try to give you a little example of what we're looking at here.
So this is your typical ice and water dispenser, where you can select what you want as well as operate it. So this paddle has actually got a linkage up in here that's operating some micro switches, And as well, there's a lever that's actuating the drawer to, or the flapper door to open up to let the ice through. So on most of them, this piece here would have to be removed, and you'll find some screws in there, and then you can actually access the whole assembly. There are other manufacturers who you can actually access it by opening up the door, and there'll be a panel there to get at it. But this is the most typical you'll see today. I guess really it's a little bit more involved, and it's a little bit more see any screws or anything, but if you have your model number, pop it into our site. You may find we've done quite a few videos on how to service this area, and so you may find what you're looking for there.
All right, we have another question. Actually, it's rather a compliment. I'm the unfortunate owner of a KitchenAid side-by-side refrigerator. Due to its constant repair needs, I'm becoming quite the DIYer, repairing it with great parts, quick delivery, and decent prices from Parts Select.
Well, there you go.
We didn't pay them to say this. I typically call and talk to customer service to verify the needed part, and I've never been disappointed.
Well, that's good news, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
All right, one more question. My dishwasher doesn't complete the cycle. I get a blinking light at the heated drying part of the cycle, I think. There's water in the bottom of the dishwasher, which drains promptly when I hit the cancel and drain button. I'm assuming the heating element won't turn on when there's water in the bottom, but why isn't it draining unless I hit the cancel/drain button?
Yes, that's a good question. There's some unanswered questions here for sure. If there's water left in the bottom of a dishwasher, it can mean several things. If it was a new installation, I'd be looking at a case where the drain hose wasn't routed properly and it's feeding back into the tub at the end of a particular portion of a cycle. The fact that the dishwasher will drain if you hit your cancel/drain button again tells me that the drain pump itself works fine. Why a blinking light? That would depend on the model number.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to try and be 100% sure in the answer, depending on make and model. It may be an issue, and you might be on the right track with the heating element. If the heating element is bad, when it's going into that certain part of the cycle and it's looking to turn that heater on, that blinking light might actually be a fault code. If there's an issue with the heater, it's open or shorted, then there's some safety devices in there that are shutting everything down as a protective thing. So I would probably, if you can submit model number and stuff, or even check your owner's manual. There's a lot of error codes listed right in the owner's manual for troubleshooting, and it may give you a little hint as to what's going on. But if I was coming into your home, and from what you're telling me, I'd be starting to head towards that heating circuit like you described. There may be something going on there. Either the element's bad or one of the thermostats is bad for it.
On YouTube, Good Sleep Gaming asks, can a washer or dryer be in an uninsulated room, or would that be hard on the machine?
I guess if you're talking not knowing where you live, an unheated room, I guess if you're living in a climate where it's a cold winter, an unheated room would be a little bit of a problem. If it's a Florida area and it's an unheated room, there'd be no issue whatsoever. Dryers is not a really big deal, other than you're going to wind up with the rubber wheels that we call them drum rollers that the drum sits on. They're going to have just like a car tire, a flat spot when they're really cold and they start up and the things go to thump for. Washer, it can be more of an issue if it's an older transmission belt style. There is a lubricant inside that gear case, and if it gets cold, it's going to get thick, and it's just going to be a little harder on the transmission, so there's going to be some, more wear and tear and sooner replacement of it. With front load, most of them are all direct drive motor now, so there's no real issue there, other than being concerned about water that's in the pump. If there's any water sitting in there and it's getting that cold and in the unheated room and it's going to freeze, well, you can imagine the problem you're going to have.
Yes, I do have some experience with that front load washer issue that's in a unheated room, actually in a cottage that unless they're properly winterized, there is water left in the inlet fill valve and in the pump. And if it's cold enough there, when water freezes, it expands. So it's going to break a plastic inlet valve or the pump. So if you're concerned about below freezing temperatures, you'll want to completely winterize that appliance or find an alternate location for it.
So good news, guys. We're just about getting close towards the end of our stream tonight. If you have any more questions, get them in as quick as you can, because we're just about ready to draw for the Breville.
And I do have a question that came through our TikTok audience.
Okie doke.
They are wondering, how do we source parts?
Great question. We source our parts directly from the manufacturer, and that's why we can confidently state that the part you're buying is an OEM manufactured part, which means it's up the exact same standard as the people who built the machine. In fact, you can be ordering a Whirlpool part and it's actually come from Whirlpool, or if it's Frigidaire, it's come through Frigidaire. So you're not looking at knockoff, aftermarket, 3D printed, any of that stuff. You can confidently buy a part from us and know you're getting the same quality as if you went and got it right from the manufacturer's door.
And that's something that Parts Select has prided itself with over these last 25 years, is that we are a supplier of OEM parts only.
All right, we have another question. This one's about electric or gas dryers. Which has the better lifespan, an electric or a gas dryer? And same question for water heater.
Ooh, all right. Steve, you'll have to help me with this. You have more experience with gas.
Well, I've had lots of experience on both gas and electric dryers. And other than the heat source, the only difference between or there is really no difference between electric and a gas heated dryer. They use the same drum roller, same motor, same belt, same everything. It's just the heat source. Typically, you would find with a gas dryer that eventually you may need to do some repair on the gas valve coils. So they may fail slightly prematurely. Most of the units that I've looked at have been in a commercial venue, such as a laundromat, which gets used and abused much more than a domestic unit. In a residential setting, you probably would not notice any difference between a gas and electric dryer as far as longevity.
And on the hot water tank side, one's compared to heating element compared to a burner. That gas-fired one, you've got some venting you have to consider and maintain, and possibly an auxiliary motor and fan for that exhaust system. So from, the least amount of maintenance, the electric one is definitely the way to go.
And we had a follow-up on YouTube from Joshua, who asked about the damper on the washer. So he followed up with us.
Yeah.
He says, front load washer, when I was repairing a broken wire for the temp sensor, I noticed these shocks that mount the drum to the frame, maybe a spring inside a tube. Sometimes my washer doesn't finish a cycle and still full of water, like it's unbalanced.
Okay.
The front load washer?
Yeah.
So with a typical front load washer, there will be either 3 or 4 or shocks located at the bottom of the washer. And what they're designed to do is, with any front load washer, the tub rotates on a horizontal axis. And because it's not going to have a perfectly balanced load, you get some items of clothing in there that absorb more water versus some that don't. That tub will start to go in an oblong circle and start to bounce around a bit. Those dampers are meant to keep that tub from bouncing around the side of the cabinet. They're suspended on springs typically, but they need those dampers to keep it from beating the side of the machine apart.
Exactly right. The other thing that can happen is front load technology is designed that these machines actually measure the speed and how fast that they ramp up to get into the high speed spin. So if your shocks are worn and they're normal wearing parts, over time you have to replace your shocks or struts, whatever you want to call them. And if you don't, and the machine bounces too much, it's got a sense that it can't get up to speed as fast as it should be because it's out of balance. It'll actually shut itself down. So you could wind up in a situation where in a spin cycle, it's trying to drain the water, trying to spin the clothes, but because it's out of balance, the machine keeps stopping that, and it starts and tries again, and tries again, and tries again, until finally it gets to the end of the cycle, and it never really did get to a full spin
And it
cycle.
gives up.
It gives up.
It
It
just
says,
gives up.
just enough for that. And so you wind up, you go to take the clothes out, and they're still soaking wet, and there'll still be water laying in the bottom. So if your machine's jumping around, and you've got a level on it, and it's level, and you've got the lock nut secured, but it's still jumping around, then you definitely want to be looking at those shocks.
I guess I think we're ready to draw a winner now, maybe over by
All
the
right.
table.
Stand in front of the fancy machine.
We'll use the bucket, we have
Yeah, perfect.
We'll use the
Yep.
bucket.
Yes. Who wants to do the honors? We're gonna.
Alrighty. All right, so I'm not going to look in. You didn't put one in for me, did you? No, no. All right.
Those numbers are too small for you to see anyways.
That's
Chris.
right. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
I'm so helpful.
Are we ready? Here we go.
Tell me the number and I'll read out the name associated.
That, to me, looks like a number 4.
All right, that is from one of our YouTube viewers. Apologies on the pronunciations. It's Dazum, D-A-X-U-M.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Beautiful machine.
So we will have you send our account a message and we'll get your mailing details that way so that we can send off the machine to you.
Well done. Congratulations. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this live. It's been a lot of fun. Steve, it's been fantastic having you here with
It's
me.
been great being with you again, Chris.
I think we should do this on a regular basis.
I think that's a great idea.
There's a Christmas present for you.
A Christmas present.
That's right, on top of the Breville there, it's something from the studio that we thought you guys would like to open.
Let's see what you got
Come
here,
on
Chris.
over. Let's rip her open.
All right. Watch your nails. I don't want you breaking the nail.
Yeah, thanks.
Something that says YouTube
Something
on
that
it.
says
What do we got in
YouTube.
here?
Oh, we got some black foam. I've always
Awesome.
wanted that. Oh, wait now. What do we got here?
Let's see what it has to say.
Your 100th or your 1,000th subscriber.
Is there-
You're definitely, remember, your 100,000th subscriber. Well, look at this. Part Select, presented to Part Select for passing 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Well,
Wow.
that is awesome. That is fantastic.
That is great.
Yeah.
Thanks to all those subscribers.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, we wouldn't have this if it wasn't for you guys.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And, any of those out there on the other platforms, we're more than happy to take your questions and look forward to seeing you on the next live.
I think they really like you.
It must be the gray hair. All right, guys, thanks very much. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we'll see you next time.
Hope to see you again.